Hello, welcome to Forest Focus as we look to navigate the international break in the company of a former Nottingham Forest player and manager to get his thoughts on the Reds running, the job done by Nuno and what he's up to these days. Paul Hart, good to have you back with us. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you, Matt. Nice to see you.
You too. I fumbled the intro then because my screen went black, if people are wondering, but then it just flashed back up. So yeah, professional as ever. I contacted Paul because I saw a clip on my phone flash up from TNT Sports. Paul was at the City ground for the game against Manchester City, so it'll be great to catch up with him. What was it like being back, Paul? I think you said to me you've been to quite a few games this year. How's it been?
Yeah, I don't get to every game, but I've been to a few. I've really enjoyed watching them, and I caught them. My son-in-law has a debenture at the Emirates, so he took me there to watch them play Arsenal, which Arsenal were pretty good on the day. But no, I've enjoyed their really the way they play. It's the manager has been excellent, I think, and he's found a way of gelling the team and a way of playing that suits nearly every player, I would have thought.
Yeah, I want to pick your brains a bit more about Nuno from a manager's point of view. One of the things that you did say on that TNT Sports clip I saw, you expected Forest to struggle at the start of the season, like so many of us did. So, how surprised are you by how well it's gone? A year ago this week, we drew 1-1 at Luton, a club you know well. We'd lost 4 in a row before that, and we were about to get our PSR points deduction. So it shows how much things can change in a year. Can you believe how much it has changed, though?
Well, I was sat in the Jubilee Lounge with some friends. The next Nottingham Forest director, Tim Farr, he invited me along to the game, and I was saying to him and another guest, third year in, staying in this league is important. And I was getting berated, bit negative, and all that, and said we're going to do better than that. And I said, well, I said, I really hope you do. I wasn't, saying it shouldn't. I said, but this is a very tricky, brutal division. How wrong was I? But the form and the way they play, I probably has surprised me. I don't think I'd be the only one that is surprised. Certainly at the standard that they're displaying, it's been excellent.
When you go back as well, one of the things I wanted to ask you about was obviously you managed us, you played for us, so you were here in the 80s. Worked in the academy into the 20th century. 21st century even, and now you're back viewing games. Is it a different atmosphere, a different buzz around the place now you're here, or it's just as more of a chilled out capacity, or not? Is the atmosphere different, do you think?
Well, I think it's certainly a little bit different from when I played, but I think we're very fortunate with Nottingham Forest supporters. They've been superb, and when you consider 2 European Cups and what our support did then to go and see that team play all over Europe, because we, I wasn't here then, but the boys tell me about the magnificent support that they had, in every game away from home, and now it's the atmosphere is probably one of the best. I mean, I can't think, if you go to Liverpool now, they're expecting Liverpool. It's not quite as fervent at Anfield as it was, when I played in the 70s and 80s against Liverpool. I think Nottingham Forest is probably the most electric atmosphere in the Premiership.
Yeah, possibly so. What about Nuno then? The job that he's done, you've managed a lot of teams over a number of years. Just before we get into some of the things that he's done, how much admiration have you got for the work that he's done in the it's 50 games he's managed now? How impressed have you been?
Well, I've been very, very impressed. I think he's, like I said earlier, he's found a way to gel the team, a way of playing, a system that suits every player. And it's, with a low block, it's the jargon nowadays, the low block, sucking them in, and then real pace on the counter, which, if you look at the European Cup final against Malmo, that was exactly the same system or beliefs or principles that Brian Clough used. And it's if you've got the right players, it's very hard to beat. And it's if you can counter at pace, it's difficult to stop.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about the nuances of that game against City in particular, because I know you've seen the highlights of Ipswich, but not that the City game in full. But the tactical plan against City, it felt very fluid. Dominguez, Gibbs-White, Hudson-Odoi, Elanga all took up a lot of different positions. How much work do you think's gone into that? How much a player's been drilled at this stage of the season into something that nuanced?
Yeah, you have to work at it on a regular basis. Belief is created by results, and but they look very comfortable whether they play 3 at the back or 2. They look very comfortable. They all know what they're doing. They know where to start the press from. It's just I would think it's habitual. So every week, every chance they can, they will be pressing home exactly where they're standing, where they're going, where they're showing the opposition.
Is part of it character as well? Because the way they play, it feels like those players have got to really totally buy into defensive discipline. We know we have the lowest possession stats in the league. If one player isn't pulling their weight, then can something like that fall apart quite easily?
I think so, yeah. They are all together. They defend as a team, and they can break quickly. The wide players are as effective as defenders as they are going forward.
One player I wanted to ask you about in particular is Milenkovic. David Prutton was on today, and we were saying, Milenkovic hasn't had enough love for his performance against Ipswich. And I said, I'm going to ask Paul about Milenkovic, and he said you'd absolutely love him. So, what is your take on Milenkovic as a centre half yourself?
I think, I think he's done brilliantly, and he's been great for Murillo as well. The two are the stalwarts for the team, and they've been. I enjoy watching them. They've been so impressive in a league, where they play against the very top players at centre forward. But they've been the catalyst, I feel, for their defensive strength.
Are they up there with Gabriel and Saliba, Van Dijk and Konate? Are they on that level from what you've seen of them?
I think they're in that category. Yeah. They're not exposed. Their system doesn't allow them to be exposed. But having said that, you have to when you defend that deep, when sometimes your first challenge is on the edge of the box or that, you have to be cool and calm, and you have to make those challenges clean. Otherwise, set plays. I remember when I came to Nottingham Forest, we sometimes that's the way we played defensively, and sometimes the first touch you get is defending the edge of the box. And he said to us when he signed me, he said, if you don't edit and kick it, you won't play. But and they are they can play. Don't get me wrong, they can play, but they do the right stuff defensively.
do they have to be that sort of yin and yang pairing? You know, Murillo's the one who can play. Milenkovic can play as well, but in a different way. I'm thinking like when you were manager of Dawson and Walker, do you need that kind of, you know, balance between a pair or not?
I think what you need is two people who understand each other, get on a little bit. That's always a bonus. And you know, it's a partnership. Two centre backs are a partnership. Des was brilliant for Michael, and you know, these partnerships are. If you look at historically, the Derby partnership of Colin Todd and what do you call it?
Roy McFarland.
Yeah, Roy McFarland. You know, it was magnificent. They both played for England, but Toddy was small and stocky and robust, and McFarland was classy, and it was it's excellent. I think that those centre backs, we can go back in history; they're all over the place. You know, they're made in heaven, I think.
Do you think, with hindsight, would you have got in the playoffs 2003 without getting Des Walker to come and play or not?
I think he was a big part of the jigsaw. Remember, he hadn't played for 12 months.
Yeah,
he hadn't kicked a ball for 12 months. But I knew him. You know, he made his debut alongside me. I just knew what he was like. You know, and he was brilliant for Michael. You know, because Michael, we put him in at 17 or something like that, and you know, he was magnificent. You know, but Des alongside him was, I think gave him the confidence to express himself.
Was that an easy conversation with Des? Because he had such a legacy at Forest and in the game. If he'd come back and really stunk the joint up, it would have damaged it to some degree. So was that conversation you had, and if it was over the phone or face to face, was it an easy one to have with him or not, to convince him?
Yeah, pretty easy for me. I said, you know, come back. I think a few people around the place were asking a few questions quietly, but I just knew him, and it wasn't, you know. He sort of said, "Well, you know, I haven't played for 12 months." I said, "Well, what do you think? You know, we've got a pre-season, get you fit, and all that." He didn't need much.
Did you call him partly because there was no money? I'm thinking right at the back at the time. There was no transfer budget then, was there? Was that what made you do it?
No. My brief when I took the job, my brief was to reduce the wage bill by 4 million and bring 4 million in, and you know, the words were remain competitive. So it was, you know, Desert was cost us nothing, and it was, yeah, you're right. It was couldn't sign anybody anyway, so.
I want to ask Paul a bit more about squad building and that kind of thing in a second, but just before that, a word for Trent Navigation. A reminder that post-match after Everton on April the 12th, 80s band, and they call themselves just a band from the 80s. Thanks Tara, you can check them out. It's free entry at the Nav. Get your food there as well. Barbecue, pizza kitchen, outside bars. Do enjoy that after hopefully we beat Everton and take another step towards the Champions League. Are we going to get in the Champions League? I don't know if I was going to ask you that, but how confident are you it's going to happen now?
Well, there are worse positions to be at this stage of the season, that's for sure. Yeah. So if they can hold their nerve and continue with the confidence and trust and belief, you know, there's probably going to be a kick up the backside at some point. But, you know, it's how you recover from that. And for me, they've recovered. They've had one or two tousings through the season, and I remember seeing Nuno on the television saying, "We have to put this to one side." I don't know how. It was one of the big ones. He said, "We have to put this to one side, get on, and return." I think the next game they won, and so yes, you have to analyse. You have to look at what you've done wrong, but you can't dwell too long, and you can't dwell too much on a bad result. And I think that's been evident of the teams, the way they dealt with disappointment.
What do you think? What's the manager's role when you say holding their nerve? Because he's preached all the way through, one game at a time. We're not looking at the league table. I think part of that's words for fans as well. But players surely are going to be. They know exactly what the league table is. They know what every fixture is. So what's Nuno's role in collectively holding their nerve? Do you think?
I would think it would be like we said earlier on the training field, reverting back to drilling the shape, not forgetting what is the tweaks, where they may go to 3 or take away the 10 and or go for a defensive, whatever. It's those presentations and those drills, so that they get familiarity. They hear the same watchwords, So he won't be saying, "Come on, let's get to the Champions League." He'll be saying, "Let's deal with the next game." Bang, 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 all that sort of stuff. So he's important. They want to hear, or he needs to be saying either way, the same thing. Either put that game behind you, move on. The bad games, the good games. That was a great performance. Bang, back to reality.
How long, just after a win against Man City in particular, a big win like that, how long do you let players enjoy it? How long do you let yourself enjoy it as a manager as well if you've had a big win like that?
Well, the games come thick and fast, don't they? I think were they playing Ipswich on Tuesday or something? I don't know.
I can't remember when the cup tie was. I think it was after that. But in general, after a game like Man City,
anyway, you haven't got time to dwell, and footballers haven't got time to party or celebrate, especially win a game. The celebrations come at the end, so mostly you've got to revert back to get myself right. Maybe in on Sunday, maybe not. Be ready for the next preparation. The manager's got to. He does the hard work. He gets. He's got the analysts. He's got the screens. He's plotting. He's having a look at the opposition. Probably prior to the last game, he's looking at the game after this one. So but his preparation is that's the vital bit.
One of the things I wanted to ask you about is squad size and squad building. Nuno likes to have a small squad. When it was at Wolves, it was about 22 players. I think at Forest, it's about the same number. I remember when you were our manager, I think you named an unchanged team about maybe 11 games in a row or something. Was that partly obviously because we were winning, but also partly did you like a tight-knit group? Did that come down to trust as well, that you only really backed 15, 16, 17 players? How much did that all come into, meld into one big picture?
Well, yeah, I prefer to work with a smaller group, but I had no options. And I think we gave something like 22 of our youth players debuts in 2 years. The first year was we had to cut the wage bill, like I said, and JJ went to Newcastle for 6 million, and we had to take our then senior players the following year. They all had contracts to run through, and so I trusted then the kids, and they were excellent, but I'm also, so whilst we had, no money to buy players, and that wasn't a problem for me, but it also, I like players to, players who are playing well, and as long as they get a rhythm, and I think that rhythm is important. I remember, I didn't like to miss games, and I think that especially centre backs, generally you never see Van Dijk getting a break. Is that his name, Van Dijk? Yeah.
Yeah.
Getting a break. The top centre backs don't get breaks because I think it's the rhythm. You get a rhythm, and it's important.
One other thing we were just going to press this morning is we were talking about the FA Cup, and we've got Brighton on a Saturday and Man United on a Tuesday. And a couple of us were saying, oh, maybe you could rest a couple of players for the United game if needed. And I asked Prutz about, resting players these days, and Championship players always play Tuesday, Saturday. Is too much made of resting players, do you think, or not?
Well, don't get me wrong, the Premiership's tough and all that, but I don't know a player yet that wants to be rested. Really, I might be wrong because life has changed in the last 40 years, but I think the more you talk about being tired, the more people start to believe that they are, and they're unbelievably fit these days, and I can understand. For instance, we talk about Manchester City, and the top teams who have had internationals, they've had about 2 weeks break over the last 2 or 3 years. So at the end of the season, but like Foden, for instance, there's a lot of tiredness in that Manchester City side. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that's why Nottingham Forest won, but I'm just trying to make an example of people who a reason why they could be tired, but really, I don't think. Me personally, I think really, there's a lot made of it, and I don't think it's for the good.
Just looking at the Ipswich game a little bit on Saturday, 3 goals in 6 minutes from what was a pretty even game, and then we score 3 in 6. Is that something that happens in games where one side is supremely confident and the other one is completely brittle? Could you have seen something like that coming in a top team versus a relegation team?
I think that's because Ipswich. I've seen Ipswich a few times. They're not a bad team. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I know the bottom, and it's a cruel league, this, but that's a team on fire going to a team that's fighting for its life, and I don't think you can be surprised by the way they went about it. Having said that, they've Nottingham Forest have approached the game with respect for Ipswich, and gone and dismantled them very professionally.
Do you learn something about your players as a manager? I guess Nuno probably already knows the group, but I'm thinking like when you were in charge of any team and you were at the top and you go to a struggling team, you can come unstuck in those games quite easily. So do you learn a little bit about the Forest players passing a very different kind of test to the win against Man City?
Yeah, I think so. Taking we used to have a saying, don't take your foot off the pedal. Just keep pressing it and pushing and be ruthless. And like you said earlier, it only takes one to think that it's a nice evening and everything will be hunky dory to upset the apple cart.
I want to ask you about Morgan Gibbs-White and his England squad rejection. He's now in the squad as a late call up for Cole Palmer, but going into this game, he wasn't. With your manager's hat on, would you have spoken to Morgan before the game? And if so, what kind of message would you have relayed, do you think?
But the Nottingham Forest manager speaking to him.
Yeah, or yourself. If you were with your manager's hat on and Morgan's left out of the England squad, would you have had a word? And what kind of thing would you have said?
I probably just having a joke or something, try and make a joke of it. And, really, he earns his corn playing for Nottingham Forest. And, if England come again, great. But know where your bread's buttered.
Is that what Clough would have said, do you think? I know it's a famous story about Pearce, and he told me
I was
wasn't good enough.
thinking it sounded a little bit like that, but I think, really, I've always, I had was tipped by everybody to play for England, and got lumped by Ron Greenwood because apparently my disciplinary record wasn't good enough. Which is, but but I always, in my head, I always thought, my club is Nottingham Forest or Leeds United or whatever, and that's the thing, So if you get picked, if you don't get picked, it's a disappointment not to get picked, but you have to, like everything, you got to pick yourself up, push yourself down, and get on with it. And he's had a great season. I don't think it would have affected him in terms of Nottingham Forest. He looks a very, very good professional.
Do you think he should have been picked for England? Now you look back or not?
I think he should. Yeah, on form. Yeah, he's done really well. He's lively. Everybody needs. Some England teams that we've seen, been a bit slow and ponderous in terms of getting from one place to the next. That's what I like about Nottingham Forest. When they break up the opposition's attack, they're quick. 1-2 touch, 1-touch, 2-touch, and they're off. And it's brilliant. So you can have as much possession as you want as long as it don't go in the back of the onion bag. It's not important.
It was funny, the answer you gave about speaking to the player was quite Clough-esque, as I said. And I'm sure I've asked you this before, but how much of your management style, how much did you lift from him, do you think?
I took an awful lot about knowing the basics of your trade as an individual. Wherever position you play in, everybody at our club knew the fallback position. So if you're having a tough time or whatever, or deal with the basics. So if you're a centre back, head it, kick it. That sounds very brutal, but you've got to be able to play as well. But bottom line is, if you don't head it, as you saw yesterday with Liverpool against Newcastle, 2 headers in the box, ended up 2-0. If you don't head the ball, and it's a very, very difficult thing to say now because of all the problems that exist through heading the ball or concussion contact and all that sort of stuff. But you do. But it's the game's not going to change, so you have to. And midfielders get turned, play forward. Brian Clough, midfielders. It wasn't enough to just receive it, a ball in from. It's to get turned, and so we play forward again. Which, it's. I know it sounds common sense, but that's what football is. But he. I'll tell you what I did. When my first job as academy manager was at Leeds United in '92, and I spent a year at Nottingham Forest after being sacked at Chesterfield. The gaffer had invited me in and said, "Just come and knock around and do a bit of coaching and all that sort of stuff." It was brilliant for a year. And then I got the Leeds United job, and and what I did, I hadn't worked with young players any prior to that, but I took this from Nottingham Forest and the manager. So this is where I started from with the kids, the parents, and all that. No swearing at referees, no pulling shirts, no dodgy tackles, all that sort of stuff. Yes, please. No thank yous. Good morning. Goodbye. All that sort of stuff. That's where I started from. And then, and discipline, don't be late. All that sort of stuff. This was everything that we had at Nottingham Forest as senior players. Don't be late. We'll be gone. And so that's where I started from. And then we won the FA Cup in the first year against Manchester United. Went on to deliver all those excellent young players: Woodgate, Robinson, McPhail, Smith, Kewell, all that lot, and won it again. And then I came to Nottingham Forest in '97 and did the same. Those are the basics. This is what I expect. Minimal. This is where we start. So we're ordinary people who behave properly, and and I think if you've known Nottingham Forest players that came through us at a time, I think you would sort of probably justify or say that they were well managed. You spoke to David Prutton earlier. He was a product of what we did and how we behave and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, Lewis McGugan's a regular as well. I think
Lewis,
he built it from Nick Marshall.
Lewis, Nick, and Nick was my first signing at Nottingham Forest when I came in '97 in the academy, and he was at Leeds. His uncle was working for me as a coach there, and he was a second coach to a team. And I remember him through some CPD things I did for the coaches there, and he'd just come out of university. So I approached him straight away. So I thought, if he can come in, because the youth development program was getting bigger, and he enabled us, because it enabled me to go onto the training field and deal with things later in the day and all that sort of stuff, and we then became the best education program in the country, the best medical practitioners, for the boys. Everything was top drawer, and we were starting to produce top players who could play in the first team. And crikey, Reed, Genus, Prutton, oh gosh, there was loads of them. The three Dawsons.
Yes.
The three Dawsons. It was. My dog's just trying to get in. So it and they were all. You can still talk to those boys, and they're still pretty ordinary.
I think so. Yeah. I should get Nick Marshall on here actually again. Nick's a lovely guy as well.
Nick's. I went to Liverpool to see him about 18 months ago, and looked at the training and all that sort of stuff. He's excellent, and very important to me. My best signing.
Yeah. Do you need to let your dog in? You can do. Perhaps had to let his dog out earlier.
Oh, I'm not letting it. I can't let him in.
No. Just before we start winding down, a couple of other quick questions. You mentioned shirt pulling there. Is that one of the most annoying things in the game today? The amount of yellow cards you see for shirt pulling. It feels like players are pulling each other's shirts all the time these days.
Well, shirt pulling is just lazy defending, and people going to ground when they're defending. It's just lazy. It's just So there's so many fouls committed through poor defending. Not knowing that it looks like they don't know, but and shirt pulling. and then this way of marking in the penalty area, where where they're actually manhandling. I mean, you saw Van Dijk yesterday. He was Trippier. For me, that the sooner referees start to give penalties for this, then it stops. It's just terrible marking, and so how can you deal with the ball? This is another Brian Cloughism. Look at the ball and head it. How can you see the ball when you're looking at men and all that? You have to find a position where you can deal with both. And I'm a big advocate of zonal marking and all that. But if you have to man for man mark for most of my career, then you can't just turn round and manhandle people in the box. If it was outside the box, they'd be giving free kicks, wouldn't they?
The thing I didn't understand yesterday was Dan Burns scores that header when McAllister was on him, and then they didn't change anything. And then, they didn't put someone different on him. They kept causing problems. They had a disallowed goal for offside, and then they scored straight after. I didn't like Slot's obviously a great manager, but surely you do something different defending those set pieces, don't you?
Well, possibly, but they obviously worked on it because like they have a zonal line across the 6-yard box, so they're supposed to get off the line and get amongst it and head it, and McAllister's there to block his run more or less. But if you're gonna do, I mean, I've got to be honest, he headed it from a long way out, and it was, don't get me wrong, it was a good header, but it was a flipping long way. And anyway, it's you're right. They could have done it, but they got this belief in, generally the zones will take care of it, which over the season, if you look at it, they have done.
Yeah, they'd only conceded one goal from corners before that, certainly. Yeah. Just before we wrap up with Paul, hearing about what he's up to these days, just a quick word of thanks for our second sponsors on a Wednesday, Vesta Blinds. If you're looking for blinds or made-to-measure shutters, anything like that, in the East Midlands and across Notts, obviously, do get in touch, vestablinds.com, info@vestablinds.com. And if you're watching, you can see the number on the screen. But if not, just check out the link in the description. I ask people this all the time. I asked Matt Ford it last week. Are there blinds or curtains or shutters in this room you're in right now, Paul Hart?
Are they what, in my room?
Yeah, blinds, curtains or shutters.
I've got nothing. This is my office, and it's got it's got no blinds, no curtains, just pictures, and it's a very dark room, so I think that's probably the reason.
There you go. Right, I want to pick your brains about what you're up to these days. Obviously, you were at Luton for quite a long time with Nathan Jones and Chris Cohen, who've moved on to different things. I asked you about retirement a couple of times. Are you counting yourself as retired now, or are you still working in the game? Or
well, I left Charlton. I went into Charlton last February, and then left just before the season started. It was just a little bit too far for me these days. I've worked down south since 2007 predominantly, and it was just a step too far now. I've driven cars into the ground for the past 15 years, and I've had enough of it. So I'm not declared I'm retired. I'm not sure I will, but probably.
Well, we moved this recording forwards a little bit because you're going to the gym, surely. So I guess you're still active. Do you still loving life? Do you still like football? I mean, if people fall out of love with the game, that's not the case for you at all, then.
No, I still love it. What I do miss is the day-to-day existence. It's kept me busy for 54 years, and I don't think anything else can keep me busy, like gardening and things like that. I keep getting a little bit in my ear, about doing a bit out there, but I just can't get my head around it. So uh, I do miss it, and the excitement and also the pressure of the games on Saturdays and all that sort of stuff. It's a big chunk of your life, that you don't see anymore.
If I offered you the chance to go back in now, would you prefer an academy job, a first team job? What was your great passion coaching wise?
I think I'm pretty good at bringing on young players. I think I'm not bad as a manager, but the stats don't say that. I don't. So the stats tell everybody I'm very good at developing, but I don't think I'm a bad. I'm a bad manager. I kept Portsmouth up. I kept Crystal Palace up. I've done quite a few things, but yeah, probably if you look at the players that have been developed by me and my staffs, it's been pretty impressive.
Yeah, one of the things I was going to ask, make a joke about was when we talked about small squads, was because you always seem to manage clubs with no money who were right in the mire. Maybe I'm missing a team. I don't know when you were hired, and that's probably part of the course of the job. But do you wish you'd had gone into a club where you had 20 million quid to lay out in the next transfer window, or not?
Do you know my perfect? If I could say, my perfect scenario was the one at Nottingham Forest, where I helped change the look of the youth development program, and I've had to put my money where my mouth was, because I was knocking on the door of the manager saying he's ready and all that sort of stuff when I was academy manager. I had to put my money where my mouth was. I had complete trust in our program and the boys that were coming through, and I don't think any of us were disappointed.
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, I guess did you get the job because of the collapse of ITV Digital? Is that how it really came about? If you recall back then,
Did I get it because of what?
I think it was ITV Digital collapsed. The bottom fell out of the Championship clubs, and we were suddenly in financial mire. Am I getting my timelines wrong? Is that how
No,
it all came about?
I think we'd overspent, because
Okay.
when Harry left, Harry Bassett, when Harry left, I think we were something like 700 and something in the black, and over the next couple of years, I think we went something like 25 million in the red. So don't ask me how, but that seemed to be the problem. But it could be other things. We were in dire straits looking at, until we sold JJ. Apparently, we were looking at they were getting administrators in and all sorts of stuff. Yeah.
And now look at us. Does it feel
Yeah.
like everything's gone full circle? When you were playing under Clough, and obviously Anderlecht absolutely screwed you, but now almost
Yeah.
back at the top table. Does it feel like it's gone full circle now?
Well, yeah, it's wonderful. I mean, there was after I left in 2004, there's been a spate of managers and coaches that have cost an awful lot of money. A number of players come in, cost lots of money. If I'd had just kept the players we had in 2003 instead of having to let them go because of the wages, we'd have been like the next year. But I think I can't say I've not, I love Nottingham Forest. I've been in Nottingham for 42 years. I only came for 2, and I love it. I love where I live. I love our friends. I love Nottingham Forest. I love the lads I see on a Thursday. Every Thursday afternoon in West Bridgford, we meet up. I couldn't be happier with the fact that, number one, to have signed for Nottingham Forest from Leeds United was unbelievable for me. Unbelievable. It was, to work with Brian Clough was a gift, and then to make all the friends we have, great players who are humble, who remain humble, no big heads, no dodgy characters, proper people. Why can't I be absolutely delighted with where I've been concerning Nottingham Forest?
A lovely note to end on, indeed. If you've enjoyed this, do us a favour, hit like, hit subscribe, do sign up for membership or Patreon, or just give us a lovely 5-star review on iTunes or Apple or Spotify, I should say. And if you're a member, you'll get early access to this interview like all the others. Paul, thank you very much. You're at Lincoln at the weekend. Do you know where your next game is or not?
Well, I do.
Good.
I'm at Altrincham on Saturday with Viv Anderson, Danny Wilson, and it's a game that's to do with the prostate cancer charity. Viv's presenting something, so we know the owner, so we've been invited there. So yeah, it's Altrincham.
Good stuff. Bit of National League football. Lovely stuff. Lovely stuff. Right. We'll leave it there. We'll be back on Friday with speaking to people who support the clubs in the race to the Champions League. So we'll see how they're getting on. And then we'll be back on Monday, probably after that, taking it a bit easy during the international break. But great to have Paul on. Great to have your company today. And if we don't see you then, we shall see you soon.